I accidentally stole my neighbour's dog and made everything worse. So, this happened about a week ago, and I've been too mortified to share it until now. But here goes nothing. It all started on a quiet Saturday morning. The sun was just coming up, birds were chirping, and I was enjoying a peaceful cup of coffee on my front porch. I live in a typical suburban neighbourhood, neatly trimmed lawns, white picket fences, and the kind of place where everyone nods to each other when walking by but doesn't necessarily know each other's life stories. Across the street from me lives an elderly couple, the Thompsons. They're a sweet pair, always waving hello, and they own Max, an adorable golden retriever who has pretty much become the unofficial mayor of our block. Max is one of those dogs that everyone loves. He's got that typical golden retriever charm, constantly wagging his tail, big soulful eyes, and always ready to receive pets from anyone willing. Anyway, that morning I noticed Max wandering around by himself in my front yard. This wasn't too unusual. The Thompsons have an invisible electric fence that keeps him from running off too far. But today he was straying a little farther from their yard than usual. What caught my attention, though, was that Max wasn't wearing his collar. Now I know Max pretty well. He's usually got this bright red collar with a little tag that says Max on it. But today, no collar, nothing. I thought to myself, that's odd. Did he slip out of it somehow? Did the Thompsons forget to put it on him? Naturally, I started to get a little worried. What if Max wandered off and someone found him without any identification? What if he crossed the street and got lost? Or worse, what if he ended up at the pound because no one knew where he belonged? My overactive imagination was already spiralling, thinking of the worst possible scenarios. Being the overthinker that I am, I decided the responsible thing to do would be to take Max back to the Thompsons. So I called Max over. He trotted up to me, tail wagging, and gave me that typical, "I'm just happy to be here, look." I attached an old leash I had from my dog and walked him across the street, assuming the Thompsons would be there to take him back. I knocked on their door. No answer. I knocked again, harder this time, thinking maybe they didn't hear me the first time. Still nothing. At this point, my concern shifted from Max to the Thompsons. Where could they be? I mean, they were an older couple and I hadn't seen them out yet that day. My brain immediately jumped to the worst conclusion. What if something had happened to them? What if they had fallen or had some kind of emergency and were inside, unable to call for help? My heart rate picked up, and I was about 2 seconds away from calling 911, imagining myself kicking in their door and heroically saving them. But before I could make any drastic decisions, I thought, okay, let's not panic. Maybe they'd just gone out for the day and forgotten to put Max's collar on him. Maybe they were visiting family or had an early appointment and they'd be back soon. But I still couldn't just leave Max outside. What if he wandered off again while they were gone? What if they didn't come back for hours? At this point, I made what I thought was a reasonable decision. I'd take Max home with me, keep him safe for the day, and check in with the Thompsons later. So I walked back to my house with Max in tow, feeling like I was doing a good deed. I mean, I love dogs, and Max seemed happy enough to hang out with me for a while. What could go wrong? Well, a lot, as it turns out. The day went on, and Max made himself right at home. I gave him some water, threw a tennis ball for him a few times in the backyard, and he curled up on the couch like he owned the place. It was nice having a dog around, even if it wasn't mine. Every now and then I'd glance across the street to check if the Thompsons had come home, but their driveway remained empty. By mid-afternoon I was starting to get a little anxious. I mean, how long could they be gone? Shouldn't they have realised by now that their dog was missing? I started second-guessing my decision to take Max, wondering if maybe I should have just left him in their yard. But it was too late now. I had fully committed to my role as Max's temporary guardian. That's when things started to get weird. Around 4 p.m, I took Max for a walk around the neighbourhood, thinking maybe a little exercise would help ease my nerves. As we walked, I started noticing something odd. A couple of my neighbours waved at me, but gave me these strange, questioning looks. At first, I thought maybe they were just curious as to why I was walking Max. But after the third or fourth person gave me the same look, I started to wonder if something was up. One neighbour, Mrs. Peterson, actually stopped me. She squinted at Max and then at me and said, "Is that your dog?" I laughed nervously and said, "Oh no, I'm just watching him for the Thompsons while they're out." She frowned, still looking confused. "Huh, I could have sworn their dog was bigger." I shrugged it off, thinking maybe Max had just lost a little weight or something. But then it hit me. What if this wasn't Max? I stopped dead in my tracks, looked down at the dog I had been confidently calling Max all day, and for the first time really examined him. He looked like Max, same golden fur, same big brown eyes, but there were subtle differences. He was slightly smaller, his coat was a bit darker, and his nose wasn't quite as big. My heart sank. This wasn't Max. Panic immediately set in. If this wasn't Max, whose dog was this? How had I not realised it earlier? I mean, sure, golden retrievers tend to look alike, but how had I been so blind? I rushed home, my mind racing. Who did this dog belong to? How had I managed to kidnap someone else's pet without even realising it? I felt like the world's biggest idiot. What was I going to do now? I got home, hurried inside with Max, who I was now pretty sure was an imposter, and frantically started searching for any clues that might tell me who this dog belonged to. I checked his neck for a collar again. Nothing. I searched online to see if anyone in the neighbourhood had reported a lost dog, but no one had. As the hours ticked by, I grew more and more anxious. My plan had gone from helping a neighbour to full-on dog-napping, and I didn't know how to fix it. I was about to completely lose it when out of nowhere my phone buzzed with a text. It was from Sarah, a neighbour who lived a few doors down. The message read, "Hey, I think you might have my dog. Buddy got out earlier and someone mentioned seeing you walking a golden retriever." My heart dropped. Of course it wasn't Max. It was Buddy, Sarah's dog. In my panic and overthinking, I had kidnapped my other neighbour's golden retriever and spent the entire day treating him like he was Max. I immediately called Sarah, apologising profusely. She laughed it off, thankfully, and told me not to worry. "He's a little escape artist," she said. "This isn't the first time he's slipped out and wandered off." I promised to bring him right over, still feeling like a complete fool. When I brought Buddy back to Sarah's house, she couldn't stop laughing at the mix-up, which made me feel a little better. But even after Buddy was safely back home, I couldn't shake the embarrassment of the whole situation. I had spent an entire day with someone else's dog, convinced I was being a hero, when, in reality, I was just a clueless idiot who couldn't tell two golden retrievers apart. In the end, Max stayed with the Thompsons, who were fine, by the way. They had just gone out for the day. Buddy went back to Sarah, and I was left with a story that would haunt me every time I saw a golden retriever for the rest of my life. Moral of the story: always make sure the dog you're rescuing actually belongs to your neighbours before you decide to take it home.